thank you that you're still the great I am. And Lord, we come to you asking you for enduing of your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding as we deliberate the matters that are before us, Lord, for the finances necessary to run this great country that we all love and want to serve. Lord, we pray that you would guide the chairman, you would guide each member, that we would do it in an amicable fashion, Lord, and yet be able to represent the needs of our people. We pray for the governor, we pray for the premier, we pray for all of our families, the auxiliary staff, the civil service, those in the front line, and Lord, even those who are under the wrath of the storm Isaiah, Lord. We pray for our Caribbean brothers and sisters, Lord, because we are to love one another. We pray now that your Holy Spirit would just permeate the sacredness of this holy chamber, that your name will be lifted up and exalted, for we ask these favors and mercies in Jesus' precious name with thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Colleagues, we do have a quorum to proceed with the business. When we left off yesterday, we had finished on page 12 of the draft supplementary appropriations bill for 2019. We had finished off with CAL2. So we're going to pick up now with TP 66. Just a reminder to members that we are examining 2019 appropriations that have been approved by the Cabinet. And just to indicate as well that, I know members are quite keen to ask questions about 2020, but our goal and plan for the ministry is to have a meeting in late August, early September to deal with the first supplementary appropriations for 2020. And members will have opportunity at that time. So we're going to commence now with TP 66.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I know some of the questions roll into 2020, but I think most of those questions, I think, should be viewed from a lens more of risk management than anything else, because risk management is one of the things that basically is multi-year. So I think it's just more from that standpoint. And I think like you take HR-related issues, you'll always have HR risk in any organization. And I think sometimes some of those questions are more like to flush out how risk is being managed as opposed to the actual spend itself, because I think that's one of the things that the committee is caught up with.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of just put that out there.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Noted. So TP 66, Sister Islands Home Repairs Assistance, $320,000. Are there any questions? Member for Bodden Town West.
Yeah, thank you. Can you just give us a brief idea in terms of the amount of homes that were actually repaired and pretty much like the average cost of each of these repairs? Thanks.
Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the member for the question. The increase, 320,000, allowed 25 home repairs.
And what was is the process for applying for these home repairs? Is it similar to the one in Grand Cayman, or is it a standard form, or what was the process like?
Thank you. To the member, through you, Mr. Chair. The process is that they make an application. The reason that the home repairs are handled by district administration in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman is because they have public works and they have the expertise to manage the project. So the project is viewed as dry clean, safe. In other words, you want to make sure that the seniors have a roof that is dry and functional, that their doors and windows allow them to live in a safe condition, and clean is kitchen and bathrooms. So that's the priority of the project. The application would be made to the district administration through the Deputy District Commissioner. It would be passed to Public Works. Public Works has two people that go out and scope the job and look at it, and then they turn that and put it out for bid. And there are 3 bids that must accompany each project. Then after that, the award is sent out based on that process. I just want to add that what we found after Paloma, 95% of the buildings, houses in Cayman Brac were damaged. So obviously, we're 11, 12 years, we're finding a lot of these issues now that repairs were made. They're starting to pop back up, and especially the houses that were repaired, zinc roof, that type of thing. We see the need now to go back in.
Thank you, thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Premier. The only reason I ask these questions, Mr. Chairman, is just so the public can be aware, because I think these are the kind of programs, especially when it comes on to our senior citizen. So at least by them hearing us discussing it, at least they know it's out there, and they can also apply if they haven't, particularly for our seniors. Thank you.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Chairman, just to say to the Minister, I heard him say after Paloma, which he knows I was deeply involved with that, which we also found in East End as well, and we had to upgrade to the new building standards. Are we doing that in Cayman Brac? And what's that? It's not the Cayman Brac and Little Cayman Development Board, I believe it is, right? That does those.
Finish?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The program is available for residents in Little Cayman. I would have to check. I think there's only been one in Little Cayman. This is a much more active program in Cayman Brac itself. And the question?
Well, if we're now, because we found all these things, and those were those buildings that were built long before our time, are we now upgrading them in accordance with the
correct
Cayman Brac and Little Cayman Development Board, I think it is?
Correct.
Which is planning requirement, yeah.
Right. It has to meet the building codes, and the 3 bids that have to come in have to be from licensed contractors.
There are no further questions. All those in favor of TP 66, Six to Islands Home Repairs Assistance, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 67, Sports and Cultural Tourism Programs Assistance, $365,000. Questions? Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this would be the right place to ask this question, but through you, Mr. Chair, we obviously hear about this unfortunate problem that's happening with the sports, with the, forgive me. Mr. Chair, I'll ask the question under a different minister. Thank you.
I know where you're going to, and I think that's appropriate to delay that. Thanks. Any other questions? There are no questions. All those in favor of TP 67, Sports and Cultural Tourism Program Assistance, $365,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. EI 68, Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport, $900,000. Any questions? There are no questions.
Mr. Chair.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, can the minister confirm that the awards or the cash awarded to persons who were affected by the COVID-19, particularly that of taxi drivers, have been completed? And can you give a little feedback on how the process went and what the conclusions of the whole process was?
It'd be up to the minister to answer it, but pardon?
Mr. Chair, I withdraw the question.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of EI 68, Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport, $900,000, please say aye. Standing
Aye.
part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Executive EA 55, Cayman and Little Cayman Roads, negative $40,000. Are there any questions? All those in favor of EA 55, Cayman and Little Cayman Roads, negative $40,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EA 60, Cayman Bluff Play Field, $500,000. Are there any questions? No. Member for East End.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how this has been going on. I mean, in the how many expressions of interest have we had with the intent? One of the intents of this was to attract sports tourism. I recall way back when we started this. How many expression of interest have we had in that field?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I thank the member for the question. The $500,000 that's in this line item is basically for the pool, 25-meter pool, the changing rooms, and a dry chemical storage, separate building. The question from the Leader of the Opposition ties right in line because, as he well knows, we did a sports complex that included a FIFA field, soccer field, multi-purpose field. We did a asphalt track, and we have been involved in a multi-purpose complex itself, which would allow us to do the sports tourism aspect of it. I'm happy to say that we have hosted tournaments that we would not have been able to do without this complex and facility. We have had football teams from Honduras, the Bahamas, Bermuda, Cuba, St. Kitts, and the list goes on. Canada. We have had Haiti, Puerto Rico. So I want to say that program is twofold because it allows the community of Cayman Brac the activity and the exchange with the visiting countries. And I can assure you when Jamaica and Honduras visit for a tournament, we get 700-800 people. Stands are completely full, and that was certainly the purpose of that building and the reaping of the benefit. It's also obviously used for the community programs, which are run extremely well by Coach Mitchum Sanford and involve 100+ young children that they move up in age, and they have their different programs that they provide. We'll also move in. The ribbon cutting for the pool was done when the Prince visited last year, but unfortunately, with what has taken place since then, obviously with the COVID, the pool has not been able to host the international exchange and dual meets that they wanted. They've only been able to use it for the local training of the swim team and the competitive swimmers that are in the BRAC.
Okay, I know it had to be something. This is just additional stuff for the pool because we voted money for the pool years ago. So I'm wondering where the five. Okay. And I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the minister telling us that about all those regional teams, countries, I believe, that has played there. But those are sanctioned games. The question I'm trying to get an answer to is, whilst that was one of the things, of our objectives, our vision for Cayman Bragg, we also had this thing about like summers where those professional teams go and train in Florida because of the weather and the whatnot and whatnot. That was part of it too. So when I asked the question of expressions in that, if there has been any, and what has been the outcome. That's where I was going.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the programs that he's talking about are things that we had spoken about years ago. Actually, when he was minister responsible, he had some input into the start of the program up there from the public works standpoint. Mr. Chairman, we work very closely with the sports department and the other teams in Grand Cayman. We have worked at bringing Liverpool and some of the other clubs that have visited Grand Cayman have also been able to visit Cayman Brac. And I believe that the positives out of that, again, has been the exchange with the community itself and exposure of Cayman Brac as a destination for that. We have not had any long-term visitors for a month or 6 weeks, as I don't think there's been that many visits to Cayman as well. One of the real successes that we have had is the university visits. I can tell you that that they have made it very clear that the scholarship program is available. And because of the visits, the Johnson and Wales program, football club visited, and scholarships were awarded to young players from Cayman Brac, and they've actually come back with their degree because of the visit and because of the help with the scholarship. So I think that the vision was clear and it was right. We have continued to build out the program and build out the bricks and mortar and the facilities, and we still have more to be built, but looking forward to continued success with it.
There are no further questions. All those in favor of EA 60, Cayman Brac Bluff Playfield, $500,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Those against, no. Ayes have it. EA 125, Cayman Brac Emergency Shelter, $530,000. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the minister say, in respect to shelters in Cayman Brac, I know that we're still having some restrictions with COVID-19, and I know Hazard Management was trying to secure other locations because the reality is that many people won't be able to fly off the island. Can you say how far they've gotten with that? Because I'm concerned that if we do have a hurricane, that there's enough shelters available because most people wouldn't be able to leave the island.
I want to thank the member for the question. The shelter itself that is identified in this vote is complete to the point that it can receive people. The plan, as was explained to me by the Hurricane Committee, was that they would put Faith Hospital. When they evacuated that, patients would go into this new facility, and also the support staff, because they are able to use this in a way to keep separation from the exposure to COVID-19. So example being, and you've been in Cayman Brac, gone to school there, you know that when a hurricane comes, you see the ambulance going back and forth, moving patients. This would move the hospital. It would move the rest home. The most vulnerable to COVID-19 would be put in this facility. The facility itself has some systems, some chairs, different things that still have to come, but it's functional and it's in the hurricane plan.
Member for Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually do support this spend because I know even during Ivan, people from Grand Cayman actually went to Cayman Brac for assistance. Just out of curiosity, Mr. Deputy Premier, what is the square footage of this facility?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I want to estimate 4,000, but I'll get you the exact number, okay?
That's good enough. Thanks much.
All those in favor of EA 125, Cayman Brac Emergency Shelter, $530,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. EA 143, Cruise Berthing Facility Project. Pardon? Happy to take 144 first. I take whatever I get. All right. All in favor of EA 144, public restrooms.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just have one question. Is the bathroom facilities at Starfish Point involved in this money?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, it is.
Any idea when that's going to be completed?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I know the member works closely with Mr. Jonathan Jackson on it, and I know he's had a lot of input to it. It is a project that has been a long time coming. So I can only give him my assurance that we continue to work to try to get it finished. And as he knows, we are certainly appreciative of all the help he's given us, and if there's any input that will help complete it faster, please just let us know.
Thank you.
Member for East End.
I wonder if Mr. Miller can tell me if his long time coming more than my one, because mine 18 months. But the same, yeah, we started them around the same time. So what? Yeah, but that only just happened. The building I'm talking about, the less than 500 square foot building. I know they had some challenges with the connection and stuff, which has been resolved a long time, or I thought it was. There's not even the electricity hooked up on it, so I don't know. I tried contacting Jonathan during this thing, and I know him, you know, but it is becoming a nice war, really.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the members from North Side and East End have not only been extremely helpful and patient, working with the ministry, trying to get this completed. We have applied for the electricity. And again, I will say the same thing to the Leader of the Opposition I said to the member Northside. We thank you for the work and the advice that you put in. I've just got it confirmed by CO that the application is in for the electrical, but if there are other items that need to be sorted, I feel quite confident that you'll pick up the phone and call me.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to leave here nor for anyone to misunderstand my question. And I am extremely appreciative for what has been done. It is, and the minister should come and visit it, especially out on the bluff. And he did. He has been there with me at least 2 times. So I'm not going to blame, I can't call him my good friend, but my friend. Yeah, he was up there behind my back. That's all right. But it is a most magnificent place now that it's almost reaching completion. I must tell you that. I have just engaged, and I think my personal contribution must be put in too. I really believe that. And I've just engaged I don't know if they're printers or what, but them to do marble plaques for the names of the ships, which I'm going to personally put there as my contribution to the preservation of that park. Hopefully, and I've been in contact with the lady from museum, Peggy something, and so we're trying to get all the narratives and all that and stuff. So whilst I'm questioning, I'm still appreciative to Jonathan and all the others, because since the lifting on the construction industry of the COVID, we have put in the 6-foot walkway that you and I discussed, all out on the side. The rail still needs to be done. The cabana has been finished. So I'm still appreciative, even though I am practicing the patience of Job. I still believe that. I guess when I look back at it, it's been a long time, but it has come out. The outcome has been quite pleasing, I must tell you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. And just back to the member, we too would have liked for it to go faster, but it was not lack of effort from your side or our side. But I just leave the comment is that both of those projects were an extremely important project, because it not only helps the population, our culture there in the districts, but it also gives us the opportunity to share that with visitors. So.
Member for Northside.
Yeah, through you to the minister, Mr. Chairman. Has the appeal by the millionaires in Cayman been dispensed with by the CPA? Because, you know, they objected to me putting bathrooms down there for people to use.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we certainly were aware of that, but I don't have the answer for you. I can get it for you.
Yeah, just let me know if I need to hold another public meeting and put them in their place.
All in favor of EA 144, public restrooms, $140,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. We go back now to EA 143, cruise berthing facility project, $2,200,000. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, can the minister say exactly how much money was spent on promoting the cruise port project in the community by advertising and going around having town hall meetings and all of these types of things.
Through you, Mr. Chair. $327,000. It was in the vote under DAT 1, the District Administration Tourism Support. 327.
$327,000.
Correct.
And how much?
000.
$327,000 promoting the cruise port project. Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry, I noticed the description also add professional services. Exact description, I think it's basically said, additional funds required to cover design, development, and professional services. Just of the 2.2 million, can you give the breakdown between design development versus professional services?
I'll ask Chief Officer Bodden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Strand Barden, Chief Officer in the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. So, Mr. Chairman, the original budget in this line item, EA 143, was 1.2 million. And what we're here today to discuss is the 2.2 million for a total of 3.4 million. So the breakdown was that by vendor. Could I ask the member?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So the commercial and financial consultancy fees, that procurement was awarded to KPMG, and that was approximately $1.29 million in 2019. Of that, their design team was $416,000. So they had a design team, but we had our own design team as well. The government that had directly contracted with, that was a firm out of the UK, Royal Haskoning, and that amount for 2019 was $273,000. So the remainder would have been the financial, commercial, and legal fees. The legal fees was approximately 1.3 million, and that was through a procurement awarded to Appleby with their expert triple P firm out of the UK called Pinsent Masons.
Other questions? If not, I put to the vote, all in favor of EA 143, Cruise Berthing Facility Project, $2,200,000 standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. That concludes the appropriations to the Minister for District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the members of the committee for the questions. I want to thank my staff for yesterday and today, and I also want to thank them for all the hard work they do all year long. So thank you all very much for the support. Certainly, I make a special mention for the Chief Officer and all of the time he puts in. So thank you again.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add my appreciation also for the professional staff that is also in that ministry. The chief officer has always been professional, returning calls, taking calls, and so forth. Mr. Rosaris, Fabian from Cayman areas, whenever we have any queries or any issues, they have always been professional and polite, and I also want to state that for the record too. So thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. We are now going to turn our attention to appropriations to the Minister for Financial Services and Home Affairs. that can be found on page 16 of the supplementary bill. We now proceed to examine these appropriations to the Minister for Financial Services, commencing with FSC 20, Ministerial Services and Policy Advice related to the delivery of enhanced financial, public safety, and national security services, a negative $500,000. Are there any questions?
Actually, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Member for Bodden Down West.
Thank you. This is a substantial decrease from the amount requested, and if memory serves me correct from the government HR report, this is also one of the smallest ministries. I think one of the Minister of Health probably has a smaller ministry. I'm just curious, where did that 500,000 savings came from? I mean, what was given up in order to save that 500,000 for such an important industry? This is the backbone of our financial services industry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, and thank the member for the question. I will ask the Chief Officer to provide more details, but broadly speaking, as was indicated in my statement made earlier, it was due to a decrease in professional fees. If the member requires more information on that, then I would ask the Chief Officer to speak to that.
Actually, I do. I mean, considering the challenges that we're having right now, I'm just trying to understand how prison or what has happened in prison. I do recognize we have certain human rights and all that kind of stuff to deal with where prison is concerned, but financial services is the bread and butter of the country. It is a backbone, one of our biggest pillars, and when money is moving from a pillar to the prison, then I would really like to understand what's the rationale behind it, because and like I said, this is a major ministry. This is what guides, that drives everything. So I'm just trying to understand. It's almost 23% reduction in the budget. So I'm just trying to understand what was given up, especially seeing the challenges now that we have within the financial services industry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will ask the Chief Officer to provide the more specifics to that question.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Dax Basteo, Chief Officer, Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs. I thank the Minister for his question, and he's very right in terms of the size of the personnel for the Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs, in particular the core ministry itself. In 2019, we had started a very ambitious program of recruitment, trying to get our staffing levels to where they needed to be to deal with the number of challenges we have. Not all of those posts were filled in 2019, which did result in some savings on the personnel side, but primarily when it came to the ministry, the reduction, the underspend in professional fees was as a result of primarily a lesser need to engage overseas consultants on certain issues. While we were doing so, the extent to which we use those fees depends on the complexity of the issues we're faced with and how we engage with overseas stakeholders. So while we were doing all we could, given the plans that we were trying to address, there was some degree of underspend in those areas, but it did not impact the overall operations and what we were trying to achieve.
Thanks very much, Chief Officer Basdio, for that. Mr. Chairman, through you, I have here a copy of the annual HR report 2018 for government, and I'm just looking at all the population, well, the staff complement for all the ministries. And of all the ministries listed here, financial services actually has, and Home Affairs actually have the smallest amount of staff complement compared to all other ministries. So it's one of the things I was always concerned about with regards to the size and so forth. So considering where we are with the blacklist and everything else, the question then is what staffing level or what level do we need to get up to get this ministry at its optimum level? Because I've always wondered why such an important ministry that drives so much pieces of legislation, and I don't think any ministry has brought more legislation here than financial services. And this listed at a core team of 9 as per this report, which I think is actually quite small. So I'm trying to understand then the mindset of what goes in where you can give up $500,000 to already a ministry that is already small for the prison. You know, so I do understand the challenges, but I'm just trying to understand, especially seeing where we are now and the challenges that we have, is this a wise place that we should have taken money from?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, and I want to thank the member for that observation, and also to thank him for his endorsement of the fact that this ministry is a very important ministry and there is a need to continue to invest in the ministry, but to also just put on record that the 9 persons that you've highlighted is actually more than double than when I first took office in 2017. So this government has actually continued to invest in increasing that staff complement by budgeting for additional staff. Obviously, the recruitment and the processes we leave to the chief officer and the administrative staff to take that forward. But we certainly, as a government, also concur with the member's view about the need to continue to have the necessary personnel in the ministry to be able to support the industry as a whole, and we have taken strides to do just that. I will leave the remainder of the question to the member to answer with respect to the recruitment efforts, etc.
Mr. Chairman, despite the challenges for this year, the ministry team has never stopped pursuing the job it has to do, and the recruitment has continued quite well this year. So, in addition to some of the numbers that the minister just mentioned, primarily when it comes to the work regarding the EU and economic substance, the Department for International Tax Cooperation being one of the key departments that deals with those issues, we were anticipating getting to the size of a staff complement of 20 to 23 persons this year, which is significantly higher than the sort of 6 or 7 persons we had last year. So we're dealing with a rapid increase in size by necessity because of what we need to do to respond to the EU. And along with that, there are also certain challenges to ensure that everyone's onboarded and trained and we can be able to respond as necessary. But that has continued quite well over the last few months. So there is certainly been a very strong emphasis to ensure that the financial services team has been expanded to meet the ongoing challenges, and that has been quite well executed to this point. It remains to be seen how we can continue to adjust, but we're quite thankful for members in LA supporting those increases.
That's okay. I will save the bulk of my question to when we get down to the 3.1 million for FSC 34. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
If there are no further questions, all those in favor of FS 20, Ministerial Services and Policy Advice related to the delivery of enhanced financial, public safety, and national security services, negative $500,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. FSC 22, a robust, efficient regime for the registration of corporate and vital information, negative $300,000. Are there questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is going to be a general question for each of those negatives, in that I, again, just want to raise the issue, or raise a question rather, of again, $300,000 being reduced from this budget to go into prison custodial services. And again, I'm just trying to understand the rationale for taking money from this one. I know the question has been answered, but I just want to register it for each of these spend going on because I do have a fundamental problem with it. In fact, let's move to the next one, that's fine.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just, and again, just as we are on this particular point, and as I had outlined earlier, the savings of $300,000 with respect to REG, is that where we are now? 16, which is FSC 22, was due to an increase in third-party revenue collected, which was used to offset the expenditure for that particular output. So it was actually due to the increased revenue collected by third-party means. So there wasn't an actual reduction in the overall spend of that department.
All in favor of FSC 22, a robust, efficient regime for the registration of corporate and vital information. Negative $300,000 standing part of the schedule to the bill. Please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. FSC 23, international cooperation in tax matters. Negative $700,000. Questions?
Is this reduction as a result of revenue enhancement, or this is just money that is being taken again to put inside bricks and mortars for the prison?
Mr. Chair, through you, again, this actually is a good indication in dollars and cents in this particular area of the government's commitment to continue to fund and enhance the personnel and the staff that the member had highlighted as being a concern generally. The government had allocated a budget to the ministry for a significant increase in personnel. However, this particular reduction was due to a delay in the recruitment of the new personnel and reduced expenditure in supplies and consumables. Again, as I said, Madam Chair, it does underscore this government's commitment to doing what the member has raised as a concern, and that is to make sure that this ministry gets as many people into the ministry to be able to support the industry as best as possible. However, the processes and those procedures are certainly something that, as the Chief Officer had indicated, takes whatever course it takes through the various recruitment channels.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Honorable Minister. How many staff exactly were we looking to recruit for this? We got the breakdown of the savings between staff versus non-staff costs.
Mr. Chair, I'll just ask the Chief Officer to provide some more specifics to that question.
Mr. Chairman, this is the delay to recruitment that I mentioned earlier, where we are anticipating having between 21 and 23 staff this year for the department. Last year, that staff complement was around 6 to 8, I believe. So that's the increase that we are seeing through recruitment this year. That's happened already.
All right. I'm just looking for what was the exact number of the personnel you said that you should have hired that you didn't hire?
The total?
The head count. I'm just looking for the head count that we should have hired that we didn't hire.
Mr. Chairman, we're aiming to have a full complement for the department of 23. I think we're close to that at this point in time. Last year was around 6 to 8.
Sorry, so you're talking about adding 15 staff. You say we're on 8, so you're looking to get at about 15, and that would cost $700,000 for 15 staff?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's correct. There may be other savings in the department, smaller savings in other places, but the bulk of it would have been the personnel savings from the delayed recruitment.
All in favor of FSC 23, International Cooperation in Tax Matters, negative $700,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. FSC 30, National Disaster Preparedness and Response Services, negative $250,000. Questions? If there are no questions, all in favor of FSC 30, National Disaster Preparedness and Response Services for negative $250,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. FSC 32, Domestic Fire Services, negative $250,000. Questions?
Yeah,
Member
exactly.
for Bodden West.
Thank you. Where did that 250,000 come from? I mean, what was given up? I'm just curious.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the reduction for FSC 32, as I indicated broadly in my statement, was due to reduced expenditure in supplies and consumables, and I've been reliably informed that this breakdown is a reduction, $90,000 reduction in CUC, so an underspend there, $80,000 from official travel, and given that more training opportunities were provided on island and the depreciation was not as high given the delay in procuring the fire trucks.
All in favor of FSC 32, Domestic Fire Services, negative $250,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. Ayes have it. FSC 34, Prison Custodial Services, $3,100,000. Questions? Member for Bodden West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last time when this money was actually voted, I had asked about the strategic plan for the prison in terms of what the overall vision would have been for the prison. This house was actually promised to have gotten a copy of that, and it's been quite a while. We have not gotten anything, and now I've seen where it has gone from just on 11.5 million to basically be jumping up to 3.1 million, and I'm trying to understand what is the overall direction, what is the vision, what is the strategy, what do we want to look for the prison. And I'm saying that in the context of seeing right below it that we also have deducted 1.1 million on the rehabilitation side. I'm just trying to understand if the vision is bricks and mortars or rehabilitating prison. I'm just trying to understand what this $3.1 million is for.
They don't want to rehabilitate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, through you, I want to thank the member for the question. The short answer to the question is both. As I'm sure the member would go back in time and look at the various budget allocations for the prisons, a substantial amount of funding, again, from the government's perspective and the overall policy and strategy was to increase significantly the correctional, the intervention, and the support services aspects, so that to ensure that there is training, etc. But also, Madam Speaker, Mr. Chair, it's also well known that the prison facility itself is in need of significant attention, and so there has been a dual track push, so to speak, to deal with the urgent repairs at of the current facility while looking at a solution, a more long-term solution for the actual prison facility as a whole, because as we know that the prison facility itself has been condemned over many, many years by several different entities, and so it is important for safety and security reasons that we do continue to invest in the bricks and mortars, as the member has indicated, but also that the reason we've seen such an increase in the prison budget as it relates to the actual services to be provided was because the government felt it was an area that we needed to invest in. The other answer as it relates to why the underspend specifically and where the actual monies went to address the other needs, I will ask the Chief Officer to provide any other additional information that he may be able to provide at this time.
Mr. Chairman, part of the issue in FSC 35, the reduction in spending in that output was more an issue of the output costing than a real impact on delivery of services. Part of the issue in the 2018-19 budget was an underallocation for depreciation that affected the costing of that output, so no real impact on services in that regard. And in relation to the increase, one of the things that was experienced last year was that there was an increase over budget in terms of average number of prisoners in custody of roughly 46 prisoners beyond what was expected, and that had a knock-on effect in terms of both providing for health coverage as well as the knock-on effects on other supplies and consumables.
Thank you very much, Chief Officer Bastille. Mr. Chairman, through you, can we get a breakdown in terms of what the actual budget was for on rehabilitation prisoners, that section, versus the actual spend? I'm just curious what that amount is.
Mr. Chairman, we'll be happy to provide that. I don't have it with me right now.
Do we have an idea how many rehabilitation programs the prisoners running at this point?
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, the prison director had a medical issue and was unable to be here this morning. I can certainly try and get that information as soon as possible to the member.
Mr. Chairman, the last time the prison director was here, he had promised, he said, this is why I like to get my stuff, my documents, my vision and all that kind of stuff. You come down here, you ask for something in excess of $10 million. There's got to be justification for that kind of money in terms of what is the vision for the prison. Now, this is one building that sits in my constituency, and this is one of the things that if anybody needs to make sure that the prison is also secure and running right, it is the people of Bordentown West. And we were promised stuff to be sent before. Nothing has been delivered, and now it's going to be more. You know what, Mr. Chairman, take your vote. I'm done. Take your vote, Mr. Chairman. The chairman of PSC just remind me that we have other avenues.
Mr. Chairman, I do recall the prison director offering to share those plans. I have seen a draft of the plan for the prison. It's something that we were to get back to earlier this year in February, but unfortunately things didn't work out that way. So we haven't progressed the conversation, but the plan was drafted.
Mr. Chairman, the last time we were told the plan was done. So it wasn't in a draft form, because that's the reason why they would actually have sent me the plan, because it was done. So now we're basically being told that it's a draft plan?
Mr. Chairman, it has been fully drafted, so it is a full plan for discussion. We have not had the opportunity to have a discussion to drill down into details and make sure all the parts were correct. So that's why I referred to it as a draft, but a full plan was prepared and could have been shared for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to know for the record, I do have a lot of prison employees that live in my constituency, and I can tell you, based on the feedback that I'm getting from the staff there, I have very little confidence in terms of where the prison is going in that regard. But like I said, let's take your vote. We'll deal with it at the Public Accounts Committee level. We'll drill into it then.
Mr. Chair, let me just state for the record that now that obviously the member from Bordentown West, as a constituent and representative for the area that the prison is located, I will follow up with the chief officer, because the plan, given that it was still in draft form and the discussions were still taking between the department, that being the prison, and the ministry. That plan was never really presented to myself or the government more generally for discussion and approval at this stage. And so, but I will say that I will give an undertaking to follow up with the chief officer to see how we can move that forward as expeditiously as possible, and therefore be in a position to share some of those information in more detail once the government has taken a position on it.
Hold a second, Mr. Chairman, this is open. We are just stripped out a ton load of money from other ministries to pump into the prison. Are we now being told that the government or the cabinet itself have not seen a plan, a strategy, or anything for the prison? So the question is being asked, under what rationale then is this money basically was approved by cabinet? If there was no strategy or no plan?
Mr. Chair, I think we need to just take a step back. This has to do, as what I've been reliably informed, more about the personnel strategy, the development, the overall, those type of aspects. The actual, as I've said to you before, the government and the chief officer will provide what the government had budgeted as a part of the overall budget for the development of the prisoners themselves, the actual human resource aspect of the strategy for the prisoners, as well as obviously the fact that the bricks and mortars is important, because the fact is it is a prison and is there to provide safety and security, so we cannot minimize the importance of having an adequate budget for those purposes. But I believe, as I have just been reliably informed by my chief officer, that the strategy that he was referring to was more about a personnel and operational type of strategy, which is something obviously that is within the purview of the chief officer and the director to develop, to therefore then be discussed with the government to see how that strategy from an operational perspective carries out the policy objectives of the government.
Sorry, just so we're clear, the strategy I was referring to was the overall strategy of the prison in terms of what do we expect the prison to look like, where do we expect it to go, and that's what that was what the conversation was from get-go. It's a lot of money. We're basically being told that at the time we're talking about looking at building a new prison. It was in that context, and when you want to go now and spend millions of dollars building a new prison, we have got to understand exactly where the prison is looking to go. And it was in that context that I asked for, at the time during the budget was being approved, to say what is the vision, what is the long-term goal, because we're not talking about a small amount of money at that time. So it was in that context.
But you do appreciate that this isn't talking about the capital works here at this point?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. But,
Okay.
but again, we're still talking about large sums of money. So
Sure.
I was going back to what the conversation was, and that's the reason we said, can we see, because if memory serves me right, and if you go back to the 2018 number, there was a big increase in the prison spend from one year to the next. Thus the reason we were asking, what was the rationale, what was the drivers, what was the vision, and is that context we're trying to get an overall better understanding of where the prison is looking to go.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do want to thank the member for clarifying, because I think we were there was a bit of misunderstanding in the cross purposes of what was being asked. The strategy, I think, to use that term that is being referred to now in this case, had to do with the business case, or the outline business case for the development of the prison as a whole. So to answer that question, yes, that certainly is something that is in train and is, as was committed to be provided. I will ask the chief officer to give an update to the best extent he can about where we are in that process. But that outline business case, which is obviously required under the PMFL and other reasons for the actual capital spend and overall plan for the prison, is certainly in train.
All in favor of FSC? Oops.
Yeah, unless, I mean, if the member if that has answered the member's question, if we want to take the vote, then we can take the vote in that regard.
I think he had given an indication. So I was putting it to the vote. All in favor of FSC 34, prison custodial services for $3,100,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. FSC 35, Correctional Supervision, Intervention and Support Services, negative $1,103,000. Are there any questions?
Yeah, just one quick question. I noticed the description for this says, provision of a wide range of rehabilitative and intervention services and programs to adult offenders in the community and in the prison system to target the underlying factors contributing to their offending behavior in order to reduce their rate of reoffending and support them to become contributing members of society. And it also goes on to says, victim services are also offered to address the negative impact of offenders' behaviors and raise awareness in the community with the goal of empowering and promoting healing at both the individual and community level. So with that said, I'm just curious to know what was cut to save this $1.1 million. What we said we was going to do that we didn't do, that total $1.1 million.
Mr. Chairman, there was no cut in services under FSC 35. The reduction here was due to an allocation on how the outputs are costed, and primarily to do with the depreciation expense that was not used in 2019. So that was a large part of the overall savings that, again, because of the costing of how outputs are done, really had no impact on services, but did have an impact on the overall cost of that output.
If memory serves me right, Mr. Chairman, we had an issue already where there was a supplementary that was depreciation driven already on prison. I think there was something that came back that had to do with depreciation. Of that amount, of this $1.1 million, how much of it is depreciation related?
Mr. Chairman, for this one, it was roughly $700,000.
Okay, and the remaining $400,000 of this spend, where did that go?
Mr. Chairman, I can try and get the breakdown, but I understand that the other output issue in this one was how the time recording system was being utilized by officers and how they booked their time. So apparently the time was booked in the wrong place, and therefore that resulted in a decrease in the costing for the output. So again, no real impact on services, but a matter of how outputs are calculated and the costings are done.
Sorry, when you say the book their time, you're talking about salaries or overtime. I mean, basically, it was overtime was being posted to the wrong. When you say the book their time?
Mr. Chairman, again, the TRS system is organized by output, where staff on a monthly basis will put in their time to what the time spent in various outputs. In this case, apparently, the time was booked to the wrong output, therefore impacting the cost of the output. So again, no real impact on what was done, but a costing issue.
But Mr. Chairman, isn't overtime paid in salaries? So are we saying that the basic salary was booked to one place, but the overtime was booked to someplace else?
Mr. Chairman, the best I can explain is that when you book time, it accounts for both salary and overtime, but it's an allocation method used in the output system to derive the cost per an output. So if time is put in the wrong place, then the cost goes to the wrong place, and this is we to adjust for that.
So $400,000 worth of that cost went the wrong place? Okay, you take your vote unless anybody have any questions.
Mr. Chairman.
A member for Newlands, and then a member from East End, from Northside.
Could we get a breakdown of what these rehabilitative and intervention services and programs are?
Mr. Chairman, certainly will provide it to the member.
No, I meant no. No.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, unfortunately, the prison director had a medical issue and was not able to be here this morning, so I'm unable to give any more detail on the...
Does he have a deputy?
How many deputies do you have?
Mr. Chairman, yes, he does.
So why wouldn't one of those individuals be here?
Mr. Chairman, the primary person would be the prison director to answer the question. Again, he was unfortunately unable to be here this morning.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, and I know this going into thing to know. I mean, the prison as a management structure, I think is a one director and is it 2 deputies? 3 deputies. And you mean to tell me that the only person that can answer the questions related to the prison, but who's acting right now? Isn't one of the deputies acting? So hold on, so who's acting prison director now? I'm sure they ain't working from home. So I hope they're not working from home.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, the prison director is in office, but this morning there was a medical issue, and therefore he was unable to be here, but he is in post and at work. So there's no one acting in his place right now.
And you couldn't send one of his deputies or someone down here to deal with this issue rather than leave the minister in this kind of situation?
I keep an eye on this, because I can let you know some stuff, Mr. Saunders. I keep an eye on it.
No, the question, the thing is, Mr. Chairman, and there's where the question is going to come from. Personal issues are Section 55 reserved to the governor, and I don't want this to be pointed to the minister, because this is getting down into now the actual management. This has nothing to do with the minister. You know, I just want to make that clear. But then the question is, for stuff like this, for Finance Committee, you are basically coming here, and between these 2 votes, you're talking over $20 million. And you mean to tell me that there's no one here from the prison to justify between FSC 34 and FSC 35, $20 million is spent. No one from the prison is here to justify this kind of spend when we spend that kind of money on prison? Mr. Chairman, that's fine. I really feel bad for the minister in this regard. We leave it to PSC.
Member for North.
Mr. Chairman, my question is more global. Is you and the government given any consideration to amending the PMFL so we can monitor outcomes rather than the unmeasurable, unquantifiable, unqualifiable, on outputs?
Member for Northside, it is something that the ministry is and has been looking to do. The challenge is defining appropriate way and measures to measure the outcome and report it in monetary terms.
Chairman, the outcome is a lot easier to measure than output, because outcome, if we give you $10 million to build a prison, you either got a prison after the $10 million is spent or you're not.
I know, but there are other amounts that you would be approving to spend for more subjective outcomes that are difficult to measure and report in monetary terms, and that has always been the difficulty with the system that we have.
Right.
That we budget on an output basis. It's measuring those outputs and whether they have been fully delivered and reported.
But let's do the outcomes that we can measure then. Let's just do some changes.
The challenge is there, but it's something they are and have been working on for some time.
Good to hear, sir. Thank you very much.
All in favor of FSC 35, Correctional Supervision, Intervention and Support Services, negative $1.1 million, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No, I just want to register my no on that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
In fact, you want to do a division actually, so we can just do the division on that one for me, please. Thanks.
Okay. Just for the record, to record, we're going to take a division on FSC 35. Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Honourable Alden McLaughlin, Honourable Moses Kirkconnell,
Aye.
Honourable Juliana O'Connor Connolly,
Aye.
Honourable Dwayne Seymour,
Aye.
Honourable Joseph Hugh, Honourable Tara Rivers,
Aye.
Honourable McKeeva Bush, Captain Eugene Ebanks, Ms. Barbara Connolly,
Aye.
Mr. David White,
Aye.
Mr. Austin Harris,
Aye.
Honourable Arden McLean, Mr. Alva Sekou,
No.
Mr. Kenneth Bryan,
Yes.
Mr. Anthony Eden, Mr. Christopher Saunders,
No.
Mr. Borna Bush, Mr. Ezra Miller,
Aye.
The results of the poll of the division are 10 ayes, 4 noes, and 4 absentees. Accordingly, it is approved. Next, we move to EI 67.
Because the Bush is on the list. He has a right to sit in here.
We'll proceed with EI 67, Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs, for a negative $1 million. Are there any questions?
You can't have the Speaker playing dual roles in the legislature. It's too much.
All in favor of EI 67, Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs, negative $1 million, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. That concludes the appropriations to the Minister for Financial Services and Home Affairs. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank the members of my ministry and the relevant departments for all the hard work that they do and continue to do, and thank them for being here today to support this Finance Committee in the questions that were presented. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people are here. No, sir. No, sir. So, yes, sir.
Members, I'm going to suspend proceedings for 10 minutes. Okay?